DeSantis giving a veto to legislation that would work to fight corruption in the Sunshine State, and it's stirring up some debate. Local 10's Janine Stanwood is live in Southwest Miami-Dade to break it all down for us. Janine.
And this is a bill that actually passed overwhelmingly that could affect the governor. He vetoed it. One of his fellow Republicans right here in Southwest Miami-Dade speaking out.
It's made a huge difference.
When all eyes were on Florida Governor Ron DeSantis touring the so-called Alligator Alcatraz facility, this letter was officially stamped. DeSantis' veto of House Bill 1445 that would limit his office from taking campaign cash.
All in favor of the motion say yay.
The bill passes. Please read the next bill.
The anti-corruption bill passed overwhelmingly in a Republican-led legislature after some published reports accused officials in his administration of asking lobbyists for campaign donations on the clock, charges his camp vehemently denies.
I'm sure it's an uncomfortable talking point for him to say that he vetoed something that affects him directly or his team directly.
State Rep Juan Carlos Porras, a fellow Republican, says the bill was fair.
We're talking about obviously having the same rules that apply to legislators with their ban on fundraising, with their ban on political activity, and translating that to the governor and his staff. So I think obviously vetoing that may come off a little irresponsible.
And it's possible for a veto override.
There's always a possibility. I'm just one of 120 members of the legislature. We would do the same thing if it were a Democratic governor.
In the governor's letter explaining his veto, he points to another provision in the bill that would have restricted his ability to appoint university trustees. No mention of soliciting donations. We did reach out to the governor's office. We are waiting to hear back. If there is an appetite for a veto override, it could happen in the next legislative session, or they could call a special session. That, however, is unlikely. We're in Southwest Miami-Dade. I'm Janine Stanwood, Local 10 News.
Okay, Janine, thank you. And officials say they're ready for the first group of detainees to arrive at Alligator Alcatraz today.
And it comes as lawmakers on both sides weigh in amid efforts to shut down the detention center even before it opens. Our D.C. Bureau Chief Ben Kennedy is live in Washington with more. Ben.
Today, Senate Republicans are in favor of this, but Democratic lawmakers are pushing back, saying this center is dangerous and it'll hurt the Everglades. South Florida Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz announced today she's leading a Democratic effort to demand Governor Ron DeSantis abandon the new migrant detention center in the Everglades, named Alligator Alcatraz. The state took over the land of the Dade Collier Airport under emergency order. It's the first temporary detention center in the nation to assist the White House's amped-up deportations, with a 10,000-plus-foot runway, fenced-in bunk beds, and other tents with cafeterias and medical checks. It comes one day after President Trump traveled to South Florida to tour the facility, along with Congressman Carlos Jimenez, who supports the Commander-in-Chief's decision to open the center deep in the swamp.
These are migrants that have committed crimes that are now deportable, and so that should be the population that's there. And again, I doubt, no, it will not be inhumane in any way.
And Governor Ron DeSantis is echoing those words. In fact, the Republican Party is also selling merch when it comes to Alligator Alcatraz. It includes beer koozies and hats in support of Trump's mass deportation plan. Eden, Janice.
Okay, Ben, thank you. And it's been quite a big legal day, so we are joined by legal expert Mark Eiglarsh to give us some more insight on these cases we're following.
Certainly a big talker today. A split verdict was reached in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. And Brian Koberger also taking a guilty plea today for the murder of the University of Idaho students. So we first want to start, of course, with this shocking Combs verdict. I want to start off with this. I mean, this was a case, obviously, in federal court in New York City. The Southern District of New York has a high conviction rate, about 95%. So given that context, was it a shock that prosecutors were unable to convince the jury that Diddy was guilty of the more serious charges?
Not a shock at all. What are the statistics on when the federal government charges someone with RICO whose main weapon is lube and Astroglide? What are the stats on that? Oh yeah, you don't have any, because they've never done that before. It's novel. And I think that's why these jurors could not get to the point of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, because it's just so unusual. They didn't think this was probably a criminal enterprise, and they weren't willing to go all the way.
And now we know at 5 o'clock, so probably in about 20 minutes, we're expecting we're going to go back into court. And so what are the next steps? I know right now they want to get him out, want to get a bond, but then we got to look forward to the sentencing and what that could potentially look like.
All right, first, I expect him to be released. He should be released. Listen, I'm no fan of Diddy. He proved to me that he's an abhorrent human being who's extremely violent and committed numerous acts of domestic violence. But he's no longer the flight risk that he was when he was facing a life sentence. On the lowest end, I've heard estimates that the guidelines might fall between 15 months and 21 months. The government's alleging 53 to 61 months. That's, enough, a little bit of a time.